We based our game off of a card game that we really like called Escape the Dark Castle. The game is like a dungeon crawler in card form. You flip over event cards which have situations where you either fight enemies, attempt a challenge, or attempt a skill check. We modeled our game after this with 3 rooms that represent the event card challenges. If you beat all 3, you can escape the Dark Castle.
One of the features of the card game is, on occasion, instead of battling combatants or trying a skill check, you have to avoid traps. Traps could be various things, and so to add that functionality into the video game version of Escape the Dark Castle, we added in different projectile traps or swinging axes or a drop spider to give the same kind of effect. So instead of having a skill trap, it has to do with whether you know how to navigate the maze properly. For each of the traps, we had a different blueprint. Each of them were very similar to this. This is specifically for the trigger to cause the spider to drop. And what it's doing is it's seeing when there's a collision, and if there is a collision, checking to make sure that the collision was with the player itself. And when that happens, it calls the drop spider blueprint. And the drop spider blueprint actually adds gravity to the spider and causes it to be visual inside of the gameplay. And all of that is occurring in this trigger that is actually a separate object for the spider. In the card game, every time you turned over a new card, you got a quick description of the room. Oftentimes it was telling you what was going on. Because our level was so big, but there was a lot of different pieces to it, we wanted to ensure that the same feel of the game was kept. And our solution to this was having these triggers that pop up a UI description of the room you're entering. And so this is the script for the first room. Same thing as the drop spider, you check to see if the collision's with the player. If it is, it instantiates that text pop-up widget, which allows the UI to be displayed on the screen. And then very similar to how we did the dialogue for the first-person game, the text would pop up and give you that room description that you're looking for. This one's automatically going through the different sentences. That way the user doesn't have to learn different key codes for each room. So the way we were going to do reactionary events to the enemy deaths was by having a counter, and every time the enemy was killed, increasing that counter by one. The original counter was on the enemies themselves, but we found that we needed to call a method on the third person character every time they were killed to see if the count was a certain level, and if so, triggered certain events. And it was just really convenient to put on the third person character because the third person character is always going to be in the scene. But then we found that every time the third person character reset on the checkpoints, caused issues. And so our solution was creating a coconut in homage to Team Fortress 2, where the variable that counts the enemies would remain in the game at all times and is completely disconnected and not attached to anything. And that is our coconut script.
I set up the combat for both the main character and the enemies, which included setting up animations and a period of time during the animations in which there's a hit detection. And this is the hit detection script. It takes the static mesh of the sword, gets the location and sphere traces it, and then if it hits this is the enemy one, so if it hits the third person character, it calls the method hit react. So then here is the hit react method. It checks to see if the player is already getting hit, and if they are not, it sets getting hit to true and plays a getting hit animation. It then takes away health from the player. We set up variables for damage taken and a decreased damage taken if they have shield. And then it also, on completion and interrupt, checks to see if the health has fallen below 0, at which point it will call the death method. I also created an enemy AI behavior tree from scratch along with the enemy blueprint, which took a while to figure out with the new sword mechanics and getting everything to work